Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have a very special guest. He has just released a new documentary. The title is Silent Cry, The Darker Side of Trafficking. You guys can watch this movie. So, Mr. Peck, Josh Peck, are you there?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Well, thanks for agreeing to the interview. It's great to talk with you again. So, for people who may not have known your name or your background, can you talk a little bit about your other projects and then this particular project, Silent Cry?
Sure. So this film is my first one. It's my first documentary ever, and it's kind of a new venture for me. But so far, I've heard nothing but good things, and people who have watched it have expressed surprise that I'm kind of a one-man show with it, because I'm told that, they say, I'm not saying this, they say that it looks like a big production company made it or something, and that there's a lot of people behind it. So I'm glad that it has that look and feel to it. Before this, I was primarily an author. I have several books out there, mostly on different types of biblical studies and things like that. And I also work at a ministry called Skywatch TV. It's a television ministry. Up until about a year ago, I hosted a show called Into the Multiverse, and I took a hiatus from that to work on this film and probably future films as well, because it sounds like this is going to be the new deal with me doing films, and probably not writing as much, but still doing that here and there too. So I'm still at Skywatch TV. I also started my own online ministry called Daily Renegade, which is a place for content creators who are biblically based and want to talk about Jesus and not be censored. So it's me and a handful of other hosts on there providing content for people who want to watch it. And so I have that dailyrenegade.com available as well. So that's pretty much my background and up to today what I've been doing.
And you're still doing the Peck Report too, or is that also on hiatus?
Yeah,
or is that part of Daily Renegade?
Yeah, so Peck Report is part of Daily Renegade, and I'm doing that. But right now, so Peck Report was primarily about politics and culture, and I'm trying to back off from that a little bit and get more into Bible study. So very soon, Peck Report is going to be taking kind of a break, but it's in favor of another show called Peck Defense, where I'm going to be doing more Bible study sort of stuff. And then I also just relaunched my very first podcast called The Sharpening Report, and just finished the first 2 episodes of this new relaunch. I haven't done that show in about 3 or 4 years, so I'm pretty excited about that. So our first guest, we have Brian Godawa and Dr. Ken Johnson, and so that's The Sharpening Report on YouTube if people want to check that out. But all of that stuff is will be available and is available at dailyrenegade.com right now.
Gotcha. And some of the people in the film you're working with, Derek Gilbert, but also Stephen Bancars, you wrote a book with him called The Second Coming of the New Age. So you have some of the same individuals in this. And I also will commend you. It actually did look very well produced. I was very envious of it, actually. It's pretty surprising just to hear right now that you did all yourself. So
thank you.
To you. Yeah, keep it up. So
yeah, definitely.
Really well done. Very clean audio, everything, all the music. So maybe what you can add, the audience might like to know, is just how you became interested in this particular subject and what got you to do this documentary.
Yeah, so there was there was kind of a position available at Skywatch. So for those who aren't familiar with Skywatch TV, it's run by Dr. Thomas Horn. He's a author, speaker, very well known in the Christian community. And Tom he always had this dream of opening a film department section for of Skywatch TV, and he wanted like a film department. And they've had a couple of films here and there. They did a 2 Telly Award winning film a few years ago called Inhuman, the final man, or the what is it? The final, or the well, it's called Inhuman. It's about transhumanism. I'm blanking on the subtitle right now. But it's that was the two Telly winner award winner. That was before my time at Skywatch. So there was this, and then they went through some other people and tried some different things. But there was this this position open, and so I had been up until that point. I had been doing all of the video editing for the Skywatch television program. And so I was familiar with editing, and I was familiar kind of with the elements of filmmaking, and without having a hand in the creative process yet, but I had an interest in it. So I talked to Tom about it, and his son Joe, who's the chief operating officer at Skywatch, and they were on board with it. They said, "Yeah, well, let's give you a shot. You know, take a few months, take a year, learn what you can, and." We'll give you the resources you need, and let's see what you can come up with. So it was really cool that they did that. So that they totally took a gamble on me and just believed in me, and so I went for it. I learned everything that I could about filmmaking and the creative process. I learned even more about just cameras and lighting and audio and all of this stuff that I had just kind of a base knowledge of, but I wasn't anywhere close to an expert on any of this stuff. And so I took some time just learning that, and while I was doing that, I was writing writing some ideas for what could be a documentary. So shortly after that decision was made that they were going to try putting me in that role, we all had a big meeting at Skywatch to decide what would be the kind of the next film, or really the first film with this new deal with having me do it. And we had different options, but on the list that we all came up with, the one that seemed most important, most relevant, and the thing that could actually save lives was child sex trafficking, doing a documentary about the spiritual side of that. And that was the one that really hit home for everybody. It was one of those God things where it was like, okay, that is the one. Because, we had other ideas too, maybe something about quantum physics, since I have a background in that, or maybe something about UFOs or Nephilim or something. But when we really looked at the list, we said, okay, all that stuff is interesting, but is that really going to save any lives? Is that really as important or as prevalent as child sex trafficking? So, and especially since Tom Horn and his wife Nita Horn, they run another ministry called Whispering Ponies Ranch, which I should mention for anybody who gets the movie Silent Cry, all of the profits of the movie go to Whispering Ponies Ranch. It's a safe place for children who have been rescued from sex trafficking to go and heal and learn how to live a normal life again. It's a really wonderful place. So they've already had a long-standing interest in that, and so that was just really the topic that needed to be done. And this was right around the time, because this was about a year ago now, so this was right around the time things with Epstein were starting to heat up, and this whole topic of child sex trafficking was starting to get into the mainstream. So it was definitely the right time. It was the right topic, and so that was how we made the decision to go forward with that. So at the time, I was just learning things about the equipment I was going to be using in the creative process. I started writing the question list and guests list and all that stuff. And I will say too, there's only 7 people in the movie, and the reason is because right after we made the decision on the film, and right when we got the first guest list, COVID hit, and we weren't able to get about half of our people here. And William, you were one of the people on that list, and of course you know that, but your audience might not. William Ramsey was going to be in the movie along with everybody else, and we couldn't get him out here because of the traveling restrictions. But we do have William Ramsey an audio interview that made it on one of the bonus features. That if you get the movie at skywatchtvstore.com. We have an over 12-hour long audio series, and William's interview is on that, along with Russ Dizdar, Greg Reed, and several others. So yeah, it was weird timing.
Yeah, unfortunate timing, but the timing to make this type of film is actually perfect, because it seems like other investigators or journalists don't either have the inclination or courage to actually address this that's happening. And I think that primarily a lot of your guests really convinced or provide convincing proof that this is really happening all over the place.
Right, and that's what I wanted to do with the film. I didn't want to do something that was so sensational that it's just appealing to baseless conspiracy theory. And I'm not trashing conspiracy theory. Actually, I consider myself in a lot of ways a conspiracy theorist. But you and I both know there's a lot of false information out there. There's a lot of sensationalism. There's a lot of stuff that just can't be proven. And when you try to call it out, even if you do it politely, you'll get blasted for it. So just recently, one of the newest memes that's floating around the internet is a picture of Chris Wallace and George Clooney in Italy getting off of what looks like a sailboat or a yacht or something. And this happened in 2012. It was on Lake Como, Italy. This has been known for 8 years, but now it's being spread around Facebook, and people are saying that it's Epstein and it's Chris Wallace and it's on Epstein Island. Now, the only reason that people are doing this is just reaction to the debates. And I get it. Chris Wallace was definitely biased. But still, that doesn't mean he's a pedophile. And that doesn't mean that George Clooney is now Epstein. And it doesn't mean that he had any part in Epstein Island. And it definitely doesn't mean that those pictures have anything to do with Epstein or Epstein Island. So that's the newest bit of sensationalism that's been kind of floating around Facebook, and people will share that, and I get that they're doing it unknowingly, but a lot of people will share things without looking into it. It literally takes 2 seconds, just a quick Google search, and you can find out about it. But then when you try to correct it, and I do, when it comes to child sex trafficking, I do take time to try and correct people, gently and nicely, but I still correct them because we're talking about life and death here, and any bit of sensationalism only serves to convince other people that none of this is real. That's what they'll think. They'll think it's another satanic panic thing, and none of it's real. It's all sensational. And so, yeah, exactly. And so you get one of two people. You'll get the gracious people who will say, "Oh, thank you. I didn't know. I appreciate you looking out, and I'll take it down." And okay, good. That's a good person. That's the kind of people I like, because I've done that before too. I've accidentally posted things that haven't that I've posted too hastily. Hope I don't do that.
Yeah, I've done that.
Oh yeah. Happens to the best of us, and so it just depends on, are we going to learn from our mistakes, or are we going to be the second type of person who just really digs their heels in and they'll say things like, well, you can't prove it's not. It's not up to me to prove it's not. It's up to you to prove that it is. That's not how proof works. But this is one of the rare cases I actually can prove that it's not, because it was in the news in 2012 when it happened. Chris Wallace himself is on camera talking about he and George Clooney's vacation together, and the pictures are shown then. And there's just no reason to think that this is Epstein and Epstein Island. It just comes to, what do people want to believe? And sometimes you'll run into people who would rather believe something sensational with no reason rather than believing something that's a little bit more boring, but there's every reason in the world to believe it. So that's what I tried to do with the film. But at the same time, I didn't hold back, because before making this film, I watched every child sex trafficking film I could find. And there's not a lot of them, so it didn't take a lot of time. But what I've seen was, it was either the vast majority of them would sugarcoat it almost. It would almost like take the human heart element out of it, and it would be like purely like clinical, just statistic driven, and that stuff is important. It's important to have data, but there is no real heart in it, and it was almost sugarcoated to the point that you can't even really connect with the victims of this horrific crime. So there was the almost sanitized, sugar-coated versions, and that's a lot of them. And again, I mean, anytime somebody can get information out there, it's a good thing. So I don't mean to be overly critical of other films that do that. Or there would be, and I will be critical of this, there's the other kind, which is so sensational and so all the way out in left field that you can't corroborate any of it. You don't know what's true and what's not. It's some shadowy figure told some guy who told his aunt who told her son that this thing happened over here. You can't verify any of it. And you as a researcher, this. If you're going to have a reason to believe something, you got to be able to corroborate it somehow. Yes. There's got to be some link. And I get, some people want to protect their sources, and I get that. But when that's all it is, and it's just people saying stuff well, then it's
Right.
just sensational, and that doesn't do anything to help. What it does is
Right.
it puts us in the situation we are in today with child sex trafficking, where most of the country looks at it as an exaggerated problem. Like, it's not really real. It's not really that big of a deal. Come
Right.
on, are there really Satanists? That can't be true. That's just satanic panic again. So every time somebody shares sensational stuff that can't be proven or is just absolutely false, they're perpetuating this myth that child sex trafficking and the Satanism involved in it doesn't happen. So what I wanted to do in the film was have a healthy balance and say, okay, we're going to take this as far as we can, with these experts who are working in this field today, who have seen and heard things, but we're also going to be very, very clear that if the evidence is that this researcher says so because he saw it, then we're going to leave it at that, and that's what it's going to be. So there are times in there, like, for example, with Tom Dunn, he's worked with some of these victims, and Jaco Williams has as well, and they will say that there is the satanic element, and so they're talking from some of their own what they've seen in the field with them working in this, but they don't claim that they can, like, show some kind of video proof or something. They actually say that this is incredibly difficult to prove. Because even if you have video proof, I mean, think about it. Like, the whole Bohemian Grove thing is still seen as a conspiracy, even though there's been video proof of that for years now. But that's still seen as a conspiracy. So even if there was video evidence, that still might not convince people. So they even admitted in the film, this is the evidence is the eyewitness testimonies from the children involved, but you have to take it for what it is. Also, there are several children all over the country, really all over the world, that are rescued, and they all tell the same story, and they don't have the ability to network that we know of. Right. I mean, some of these kids are 6, 7 years old. What is there some secret, online message board that they're all communicating on to tell everybody this lie, or is there actually something going on here? So we do take it as far as we can, responsibly. So we don't hold back, for sure, and we do have the human element in there. People will be able to connect with the victims. We even have victims in the film, but at the same time, they're not going to see some sensationalistic, like, slasher movie. They're not going to like have to hear about, like, the really gruesome details. And I try to make clear in the movie too that, you don't even have to believe in the satanic element of this whole thing to know that child sex trafficking is on the rise. The numbers clearly show that. The statistics that can be backed up and can be proven by independent agencies, that the numbers are rising, and the reason it's rising is because most of the country ignores this topic, and it's been allowed to grow under the surface. So that's where we find ourselves in America today, and that's what I was trying to do with the film.
Well, I think that you were succeeded in that. I think from a variety of sources that you did, but I think you showed, particularly through Tom Horn, the dangers of hoaxes, because he mentioned John Todd,
yes,
kind of a well-known hoax, the dangers of hoax, but also what we know, particularly about Epstein, all the occult statuary and design and all this really strange stuff. And I can corroborate or add to what he said, because in some of the writings of one of the victims, Virginia Giuffre, like, she said that these guys had statuaries of Pan. There's pictures of Maxwell with, like, demonic imagery. There's black robes. So we don't know the totality of what's going on at that island, but very dark stuff. And I mean, the trafficking that they were involved in for 25 years was industrial. It was a massive trafficking operation. And I think you stated a fact, or Jaco Boyan stated a fact, that the trafficked children, their life expectancy is only 7 years.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to think that these kids, and I've seen some of that play out in some of the victims of Hollywood, the young kids, a lot of them die very young, and it just corroborates exactly what he said.
Yeah, exactly. And we can also show, and we start with this right in the beginning of the film, that there's documented proof from the government itself, from the FBI website itself, that there already was a case that was covered up by some higher up. We don't know exactly who, but it's the whole Finders cult. And I know this is something you've reported on as well, but I started the movie with the whole Finders cult. We go through like all of the documents and really tell the story. Now, the documents are heavily redacted, so we were able to pretty much tell the story within about 10 minutes. Of course, there's a lot of details and I mean, you could talk for hours just about that one topic, but I mainly wanted to get across the idea that, you know what, we can't trust the government to solve this problem because they have a clearly stated standing interest in covering sex abuse up for whatever, for what reason we can speculate about, but they seem to have some kind of interest in covering it up. Now, I would not say that, our current president is involved with that. He seems to be one of the few that's actually working to end this or fight against it at least. But that's, he's one of very few that's in that camp. Most of the swamp or the deep state or whatever, they have this standing interest in keeping this thing going, which the Finders case is able to show. That happened in the 80s. So are we supposed to think that, they somehow just decided to clean up their act now? Of course not. They got away with it. And if anything, it's reasonable to assume it's worse now than it was. And actually, it's not even a reasonable assumption. It's just a stated fact that child sex trafficking in our country is worse now than it ever has been. America is ranked one of the worst countries in the world for human trafficking, which that would surprise most people because, we tend to look at America as this kind of shining beacon of light and hope for the world. And it is, in many ways, it is that. But there's still a huge problem here. One of the worst countries for human trafficking. 1 out of 4 victims of trafficking are children. So we're at a point now where 25% of trafficking victims in America are children, which is horrifying. And in terms of numbers, that's at least, it could be more, it probably is more, but we dealt with conservative numbers in the film because again, we didn't want to run the risk of being sensationalistic. I would rather be, more on the conservative side than more on the liberal side when it comes to these numbers, because the conservative numbers are horrifying enough. But the lowest numbers say that 500,000 kids, 500,000 kids are being trafficked per day in America. Some of the higher numbers say over 1 million. So we can say at least 500,000, probably more, but at least 500,000 kids are being trafficked every single day in America. So this isn't even just the totality of this decade or anything. This is every day. And of those, a child who is trafficked is raped on average 5 to 15 times per day. So 500,000 kids every day are being raped 5 to 15 times every day in America, just in America. Millions and millions and millions of just continuous rapes. And like you said, the average age of these victims is only 7 years old. And people wonder, well, why don't we hear about this? It's because only 1% of this crime, the whole crime of trafficking, only 1% is ever even reported. And again, it's because it's a very difficult thing to prove. And even in the average ages that we get are a little skewed too, because they don't factor in the kids that have died from the abuse. So right now, the average age of girls actively trafficked is 12 to 14 years old, while the average age of boys is about 15. And that's horrifying enough. That's young enough. That's still horrifying that it's that young. But it actually would be a lot younger if the kids who died, if their ages were factored in as well. Because like you said, the average life expectancy of a child who is trafficked is only 7 years. So that means half of the kids that are trafficked are younger than 7 years. And that's the average life expectancy, so they, or I should say, under half die at under the age of 7. Half of the kids who are trafficked who die, they die under the age of 7, and then half die over, because 7 is the average. So that means that children who die, they're not counted in the average age of active trafficking, making that age, the 12 to 15 years, appear older. So if the average life expectancy of a child trafficking victim is 7 years, again, only half of these kids actually survive past 7 years, while half are killed at age younger. And they, they die from the violence of the trauma of the rape itself. They're given drugs or suicide. Or they just die alone on the street. And even with adults, it's horrifying. We really focused on the children in the film, but we do talk about adult human trafficking as well, because there's a lot more of that going on than most people would think. According to Jaco Booyens, and just according to just the definition of trafficking and prostitution, only 98% of global prostitutes they're not actually prostitutes, they're trafficking victims. So only 2% are actual prostitutes. And the reason is because for it to be prostitution, it would have to be completely voluntary. So that means if there's any force, or if a woman is raped ever, or told that she has to do this to pay off some kind of debt, if it's not just free will, then that's not prostitution, that's trafficking. And so by Jaco's numbers, and he's at sharetogethernow.org, but according to his numbers, that's 98% of what we call. So think about that. The people that are fighting for rights of prostitutes, they're not actually fighting for the rights of prostitutes. They might think they are,
right.
but right. they're fighting for the rights of traffickers, the freedom of traffickers to continue not only peddling adults but children as well, including all of the rape and the abuse and drugs and murder that comes along with it. It's horrifying.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's a lot of that stuff going on where the women get threatened, they threaten their family. I've heard of all kinds of different stories like that. So there's a lot under the surface that the public is not aware of. So who was Jaco Booyens, and can you describe his interest in this whole phenomenon to the listener?
Yeah, definitely. So he's been fighting in this fight for years now. He and his sister Ilonka Deaton, they kind of go hand in hand in the film. So they're brother and sister. Jaco and Ilonka are brother and sister. Ilonka was sex trafficked as a child, and they're from South Africa. They immigrated to the United States after Ilonka was rescued. So this happened in South Africa, but when they emigrated, they saw this happening in America too, and they decided to get involved. But so when Ilonka was a child, she won a singing competition, and she was trafficked by her manager without her mother even knowing. Because not all, and this is one of the most horrifying things for parents is that not all trafficking cases involve a kidnapping. There are a lot of children who are being trafficked, and the parents don't know. Because the girl is allowed to come home, and either they're threatened to not tell their family, and that's what happened with Ilonka. She was told that if she told her mother, then this guy would kill her mom and make her watch, and it was this horrible thing, so she kept it a secret. And that happens. Or sometimes what happens is, the girl might not have a strong relationship with her mom and dad, and so this older boy or this older guy comes into her life and convinces her that he loves her, and then starts trafficking her, but like convinces her that it's like an expression of love or something, and they're doing this for their future or whatever. And don't tell your mom and dad; they won't understand you. They don't understand you the way I do. So that's why having a strong family is really important. But the girl is allowed to go home, and then she doesn't tell her parents. The parents might notice an attitude change, but they just think, well, she's becoming a teenager, so that's normal, and it's anything but. So Jaco actually helped rescue his sister Ilonka out of sex trafficking, and since then, after that whole ordeal, which we get into that in the movie, Ilonka tells her whole story. After that, they come to America. They see the same type of trafficking problems that existed in South Africa. They started seeing that here in the United States. I think around 2001 is when they first started noticing it, and they decided to get involved. So now they work on the front lines of this fight. Both of them do. They tour the country. They do talks in various places and conferences. Like I said, Jaco Booyens, he directed and produced the feature film 8 Days, which people can find on Amazon, to raise awareness about the reality of sex trafficking in the U.S. He's the founder of Share Together, which is a nonprofit organization fighting against the global crisis of sex trafficking. And then Ilonka, she's, like I said, a survivor of child sex trafficking. Right. Tells her whole story in the film, and she's Jaco's sister, but she also tours the country and talks about what happened to her and how families can notice some of the warning signs.
Right, and they talk about, like, she was groomed and she was trafficked to other CEOs, business people. Yeah. So it's almost kind of like Jeffrey Epstein, but in South Africa.
Yes, and several Epsteins.
Right. So so it was. I just kind of you could see this, but they also talk about the kind of normalization process, or how this is supposedly becoming. It's like the society is being groomed in a way. Can you talk a
Yes.
little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely, and that's something that we're seeing a lot. I recently did a presentation for this for our latest Defender conference, but there's a massive effort in this country right now to normalize pedophilia, and we all knew that this was coming, and we have been talking about this for at least a decade, but we were told that that's a slippery slope fallacy. That's not real, and well, here we are, and it's happening now. So just one,
Right.
we're getting new stories of this all the time now. It's almost like a weekly thing, and it's going to become a daily thing. It's going to become even it's going to be more often. This stuff is coming out. The most recent one is the child sexual exploitation in the movie Cuties, which a lot of people canceled their Netflix over. And the way that it was explained was, well, they're in the movie, they're trying to show the dangers of trafficking, and they're trying to inform parents and whatever. But that's just an excuse, because in order to do that, what did they have to do? What did they do? They sexually exploited child actors. I mean, there's child pornography in that movie, so that means there's a real live child who's a so-called actor who has shown their private parts, whose parents allowed this child to show their private parts on camera for the nation. That's child pornography. That is the same as saying, well, I want to raise awareness about the dangers of heroin addiction, so I'm going to get my child addicted to heroin, so then everyone can see how bad it is. That I would be a absolute criminal. I'd be a monster to do something like that. But that's the same mentality that we see today with this Cuties film. And I mean, even big time film critics, even Roger Ebert, he wrote a critique of the film, I guess, a review. Really, it was really a praise of the film, and the basic thing that he said was, people just kind of, and I'm paraphrasing here, this isn't his exact words, but people just kind of got to get over themselves and realize what the artistic minds behind this film were trying to do. They were trying to wake up the country to, the dangers of grooming and trafficking and all that. And so it's like, okay, and this is what they say. This has always been the attitude. If you don't agree with us, you're too stupid, you're too bigoted, you're too racist, or you're too low-minded.
You're a right winger.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, exactly. You're a right-wing conspiracy nut, and you're too low-minded to understand what we up here are doing. When really the opposite is true. So there's this big push towards pedophilia normalization. And we get into it a little bit in the film, but we do talk about how it's really being pushed in schools. They want to teach, and they are teaching sex ed in some schools now, public schools, in kindergarten, which there's just no reason for that, except to get them early, get them young while they can, to shift the culture in towards their direction. And really it's they have these sexual perversions that they want to be able to freely express. They know they can't unless they change the culture, so that's what they're going to do. And then a lot of us, we see it and we complain about it, but when it comes to actually doing something, what we need is, we need more people like you, and I hope people like me, but we need more people willing to talk openly about this, put their credibility on the line, and say, you know what, I don't care what names you call me, you're a pedophile apologist, and if you're involved in this stuff, and if you're okay with this stuff, you're not going anywhere near my kids, and this is just not the direction this culture is going to go in. We need to care more about the children at risk here than we care about ourselves. And it seems like too often, too many people choose to say, yeah, that's really bad. That's terrible that they're doing that. And then they flip the channel and then they forget about it immediately. So they kind of ride the fence. And what I'm saying is, there is no fence. The fence it's an illusion. You're either a part of the problem or you're a part of the solution. There's no in between. There is no version of reality where you're outside of this problem. So for somebody to be inactive in this fight, they're actually helping the pedophiles by getting out of their way. It's just like if somebody is shooting up a school and you don't do anything to stop it, or if you have the ability to do something to stop it and you don't even try, and you just let people get killed. And it's like, well, you had a bulletproof vest, you had a gun of your own, but you didn't step in the way of, you didn't try to do anything. That's what we're dealing with now. So it's not just that people are on the fence, it's they are unknowingly, actually helping the abuser. So I'm here to tell people, I want to take that ignorance away from people and tell them, look, you're not a bad person because you didn't know what the circumstance was up until now. But now that I've said this, you do know now. So if you continue to be inactive, then that's a problem. And that's something that you'll have to answer to God about someday. But so I greatly applaud people like you who are willing to talk about this issue. And I know you've been talking about it longer than even I have. And you were one of the inspirations, for me getting behind this issue to begin with. So I can totally relate to people who just aren't aware, because I was exactly there a year and a half ago. So I get it. But my whole thing is, okay, you were unaware before, but you're aware now because you're listening to William Ramsey's show and you're hearing Josh Peck, and now you know the information, so you don't get to pretend that you're on the sidelines anymore if you continue to be inactive. Then, but the good thing is you can be active in it, and it's actually kind of easy. Surprisingly, this is one of those things where you don't have to go uproot your life and move and join some big ministry and go get involved in raids and join the police force. It's actually really easy to get involved now and be a positive influence. Even something as simple as just sharing credible information about it online. Don't get involved in the sensationalism, but share credible information. Something as little as that really helps. I compare it to this. In our country right now, a lot more people are health conscious. And that wasn't because of some higher up in the government telling everybody they had to be. It had nothing to do with the government. The government actually tried to do that in New York. They tried to limit the size of sodas that people could get, and everybody just laughed at them and said, that is so dumb. That's going to make me drink even more soda than I did before. That's typically like the American reaction to government overreach. But now we live in a time where a lot more people are health conscious. There's still a ways to go, but everybody has at least heard of the keto diet. Even if they're not on it, they've at least heard of it. The information's out there. A lot more people on their own decided to get more health conscious. It was like a cultural shift, and it's because individuals decided that they were going to start taking their health more seriously. There's no reason that can't happen with child sex trafficking, that there can be this cultural shift towards protecting our children, towards not renting movies if it has sexually explicit material, because there comes a point where we have to ask ourselves, do I care more about my entertainment, or do I care about children being raped? Because it really is that cut and dry. 68% of Christian men are addicted to pornography. So are we going to continue in that addiction, knowing, because Josh Peck is telling you right now, and you can go and search this online, and you should search it online, anybody who's listening, there is a direct one-to-one connection between pornography and child sex trafficking. If you view pornography even one time, you are supporting child sex trafficking, even if you're not intending to. Your intentions don't matter. It's what are you actually doing? So I tell people, because there have been people that have talked to me privately and said, I do have an addiction to pornography and I don't know how to stop. What can I do? And the practical advice I give is I say, well, okay, this is going to sound silly at first, but right now the thing that you have control over is your actions. So stop. And, but that's not the end of it. I'm not going to just say, okay, well, just stop and then you're done. But you're still going to have this temptation. You're still going to have this want for it. So the way that you get rid of that, because it's the want, it's the temptation that drives somebody to action. So stop the action first, and then, like, immediately after, 5 minutes after you've decided that you're going to stop this action, immediately go and read every article you can find about the link between child sex trafficking and pornography. It will make you sick. It will make you hate pornography. You will hate everything about it. You will, in a good way, you'll begin to hate yourself for doing it. It'll make you, it'll drive you to not want to do it anymore. You will hate it. And we even have an interview with Bree Marie Atkins. She used to be addicted to pornography, and she talked about it in the audio series. And she has said that this is a way that people have been able to find freedom, is just by looking at it specifically for what it is and refusing to romanticize it anymore. It's not just this private sin. It's not just this little guilty pleasure that doesn't affect anybody else. It affects children, and you're supporting the rape of children if you're even viewing pornography. So individuals can make the decision they're not going to do that anymore. They're not going to give their money to film companies who are producing sexually explicit material and contributing to this over-sexualized culture. It really is something as simple as, if you don't look at it, it will go away. Vote with your dollar. Don't support it. If the country could get behind this, and it's going to take individuals deciding to do it on their their own. This is why you have fast food restaurants offering like non-GMO like turkey bacon now. You know, that wasn't a thing 15 years ago, 10 years ago, but it is now because there's a demand for it. We can have the same thing with wholesome media. We just have to that's where we have to give our money to wholesome media. Go on Amazon, find Silent Cry, The Darker Side of Trafficking, and give it a 5-star review. Tell Amazon that this, if you think that we've deserved it, tell Amazon this is the kind of content we want on your platform.
Good
and
point.
if Amazon and these streaming services, if they see that there's more money to be made with wholesome family stuff, they will produce wholesome family stuff because they care about money more than they care about any kind of agenda, because their ideology is weak. You know, they're spineless. Corporations in general are pretty spineless. I mean, they will cave to 1,000 Twitter users, like Nike did, like many times over. You know, all these sports agencies did. You know, football's totally different now than it ever was. And I mean, they cave to a couple of thousand Twitter users. I mean, there's only like what I don't know if this is true, but I read somewhere that like only 2% of the U.S. population is even on Twitter or even like uses it regularly or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not that many Americans, but still that small amount of Americans, because these corporations are spineless, and by and large we live in a spineless age in American history and world history too. We live in a spineless age. It is fairly easy to sway these people. We just need to actually do it. You know, we need to actually decide as individuals, I am going to start being part of the problem, or part of the solution. Sorry. I'm going to start being part of the solution. I'm not going to be part of the problem anymore. And I'm going to contribute to the kind of culture that I would like to see in this country, one that protects its children and stands up for the most innocent among us.
That's a great way to end it. And for people who don't know, there are tons of 5-star reviews already on the Amazon site. I don't think this movie's been out. When was the actual release date?
Oh, only like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
it's
so
fairly recent. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you have at least 15, at least last time I checked, 15 5-star reviews, which
yeah,
are well deserved. Where is it now?
Almost 30 now.
30, cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it was like 27 the last time I checked. So yeah, we're really excited about that. People seem to really be getting a lot out of it. And why I keep telling people to review it is because that does convince Amazon to start putting the movie in their new release categories and start suggesting it to their users, which if they do that, if Amazon decides to do that, this can blow up. And like I said before, it's not about making me famous. I don't care if people know my name or not. It's about getting the word out about these abused kids, shifting the culture in the right direction, and this is how to do it. I think people just need to be informed. I don't think it's going to take much convincing for people to realize, yeah, our children probably do need to be protected. So you have no idea how far your review can go. It can go a long way. Also, I'll mention real quick, if people get the movie at skywatchtvstore.com, it does come with a lot of other products for only a $35 donation. Again, the profits go to Whispering Ponies Ranch. So like I said, it's not about making me rich. It has nothing to do with me. Whispering Ponies Ranch is a place of healing and safety for kids rescued out of sex trafficking. So for a $35 donation, you get the film, but you also get Covert Investigation, which is like a bonus DVD of extra interviews with all of the guests from the film. You get A Cult of Perversion, which is that MP3 audio disc that you, William Ramsey, are on, and several other people. There's over 12 hours. Russ Dizdar, William Ramsey, Greg Reed, who is actually a satanic ritual abuse survivor. He tells a story in that, and he's an investigative researcher now. And so we have over 12 hours of audio on there, just mind-blowing interviews. We have Fake News or Hidden Truths, and that peels away the sensationalism of the Pizzagate narrative from a few years ago, and actually looks at the year 2020, looks at this year, and says, okay, what about that was true? Because there was a lot in there that actually was true. There was a lot of sensationalism, though, too, which is why the whole thing died out so fast, because people got sick of the sensationalism. But there was a lot of truth there. So Stephen Bancar's, we put together this whole separate, like, basically it's like a second documentary with Stephen Bancar's, and he goes through all of his research into the Pizzagate narrative. This isn't just old rehashed stuff from 2016. This is new current research from this year. And then we also have Epstein's Orgy Island MP3 audio disc, which is Dr. Thomas Horn talking about all of the occultism around Epstein Island. And it's a 3-part exclusive MP3 audio series. And all of this stuff you can't get anywhere else. in this package. You can get it at skywatchtvstore.com. If you only want the movie and you just want to rent or stream it, you can do that on Amazon. Just search Silent Cry, The Darker Side of Trafficking, and you'll find it. Wherever you get the movie, though, again, I want to really stress the importance. Please leave a review. Right now, we're at 27 5-star reviews. And I have not even been telling people to leave 5-star. I mean, I want 5-star. The more of those we get, the better. But I haven't been instructing people to do that. I say, just leave an honest review. If you feel we've deserved 5 stars, then give us that and then tell us why. So we haven't gotten anything below 5 stars yet, and that's out of 27 just kind of random people that I don't know. So that's a great start.
That's great, yeah.
But it's gonna take more. It's gonna take more people deciding, you know what, I'm going to take 2 seconds to be a part of the solution. I'm going to leave a review and help convince Amazon to start suggesting this to its users so we can make this a countrywide, hopefully worldwide phenomenon and start shifting the culture back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, totally agreed. So you can get the show with extras at Skywatch TV.
Yep.
It's also on Amazon. Do you have it on Vimeo as well? Is that
that was just the private viewing link that I sent to you and other people that want to interview me. We may put it on Vimeo for rental. We're deciding first to see how Amazon handles it because this is the first time that we've really done it this way with Amazon, and we're kind of testing the waters. If they just decide that they're going to take the movie down and suppress it and not put it anywhere, then we'll probably go to Vimeo and just do Vimeo rentals from now on. So we're kind of testing the waters. So it's not available on Vimeo as of right now. If they want to stream it, the only place they can is Amazon.
Gotcha. Okay, again, it's Josh Peck, the movie, an excellent movie, highly recommended. Silent Cry, The Darker Side of Trafficking, available at Skywatch TV, store on Skywatch TV, I believe, and on Amazon. So go watch the movie, give it a 5-star. Josh Peck, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time for this.
All right, enjoyed it. All right, let's see.